Somebody you know is going to embarrass themselves this week. Trip on a curb. Say the wrong name in a meeting. Walk into a glass door in front of a group of strangers. And in that half second after it happens, before anyone consciously decides how to react, something ancient takes over, something older than words, older than the group of people standing around watching it happen. Someone laughs. Not because it's cruel, because 40, 60, maybe 80,000 years ago, that exact reflex was the difference between your ancestors staying alive as a group and your ancestors turning on each other and dying alone. I'm going to show you what the actual first joke might have sounded like. And it's not what you think. It wasn't clever. It wasn't even really meant to be funny. It was a tool, a dangerous one. And the people who figured out how to use it correctly are the reason you exist. Here's what almost nobody gets right about this, including people who've spent their careers studying it. Humor didn't start as entertainment. There was no stage, no audience, no punchline waiting to land. The earliest form of what we now call a joke showed up in the middle of a crisis, not a comedy set. There's a specific question buried in this that took real researchers years to even know how to ask. How do you find evidence of a joke? You can't carbon date a laugh. You can't dig up a punchline. So how do we actually know any of this happened? There's a second mystery underneath the first one. The oldest joke that's ever been physically found and written down, provable, on record, is about a specific bodily function that 4,000 years of humans somehow all found funny. We'll get to exactly what it says. It's ridiculous. And there's a third thing, the one that actually matters to you personally. Right now, today, you do something involuntary every single time you mess up in front of people. You've never once questioned why you do it or where it came from. By the end of this, you will. And you might start noticing it happen in real time this week before you can stop yourself. Picture the exact moment. You're carrying something and you drop it in a crowded room. Everyone turns. Before you've said a single word, before you've even decided how embarrassed to be, a sound is already coming out of your mouth. That sound has a history longer than every civilization combined. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what it's doing there. It's roughly 80,000 years ago. The southern coast of what is now South Africa, near limestone cliffs that still stand today, riddled with caves early humans used as shelter from ice age winds coming off the sea. We'll call him Kale. He has a chipped front tooth, worn down years earlier from cracking open marrow bones with his jaw when there was nothing softer left to eat. The air smells like salt, wood smoke, and the inside of a cave that's been lived in for generations. Somewhere behind them, a child is crying, quietly. The way children cry when they've learned crying doesn't get them fed any faster. Kale is part of a hunting party of 6, tracking a herd of eland across dry grass that hasn't seen rain in weeks. Everyone is hungry, not uncomfortable hungry. The kind of hungry where your hands shake slightly when you lift a spear and nobody mentions it. The grass had gone completely silent a few minutes earlier, the kind of silence Kale had learned to trust more than any sound, because it usually meant the herd was close and calm. Then Kale steps on a branch. It's dry. It snaps louder than anything has any right to snap in that much silence. The herd bolts. 4 days of tracking, gone in half a second. 6 adults, starving, turn to look at the one who ruined it. Before I tell you what happened next, think about what you'd expect. Picture it. A hungry, exhausted, cornered group of humans, and one member just cost everyone a meal that might not come again for days. What's the obvious response here? Because what actually happened is close to the opposite, and researchers have actually found evidence for why in a roundabout way. When they first pieced it together, it didn't make sense at all. Back to Kale, standing there, waiting to find out what happens next. In a group this hungry, this stressed, the expected outcome is punishment. Maybe exile. Groups under survival pressure don't usually forgive mistakes that cost everyone food. But here's what's even stranger about what actually happened, and this is where the story stops being folklore and starts being something scientists can measure. In 2009, a researcher named Marina Davila Ross, working out of the University of Portsmouth, did something nobody had really tried before. She recorded the sounds great apes make when they're tickled. Not humans. Chimpanzees. Gorillas. Orangutans. Bonobos. All of them, in captivity and in the wild, tickled the way you'd tickle a kid and recorded on tape. Then she ran the acoustics through the same kind of analysis biologists use to trace how species relate to each other. What she built was essentially a family tree, not of bodies, of laughter itself. That tree went back roughly 10 to 16 million years, long before humans, long before language, long before fire. Laughter is older than almost everything we think of as human. Wait, before you process that, here's what makes it stranger. If laughter predates language by that much, it means our ancestors were bonding, calming each other down, diffusing tension, millions of years before they had any way to explain why they were doing it. The pattern showed up almost identically across species that hadn't shared a common ancestor in over 10 million years. That's not a small coincidence. That's a signal evolution kept around on purpose, because it kept working. Now think about Kale again, standing in front of a hungry, furious group. What happened next wasn't punishment. An older hunter mimicked the exact sound of the branch snapping, then mimicked Kale's stumble backward, exaggerated, arms flailing, and the group laughed, hard. The kind that comes out before you've decided to let it. Remember what I said at the start of this video? That reflex is still in you right now. Here's where it gets stranger still, because your own brain treats laughs like that as a completely different event from a polite one. In 2003, Barbara Wild and a team at the University of Tübingen reviewed every major brain imaging and lesion study on laughter available at the time and found something nobody expected going in. Laughter runs on two separate neural pathways. One is involuntary, wired through the amygdala and brainstem, the part of you that laughs before you've decided to. The other is voluntary, routed through the motor cortex, the part you use to perform a laugh on command, the one you reach for in a meeting when your boss says something that isn't actually funny. Two different circuits, two different laughs. And the split is so real it shows up in people with certain kinds of brain damage, who can laugh genuinely at something funny while being physically unable to fake one on request, or the reverse. Which means when that older hunter mimicked Kale's stumble, and the group's laugh came out immediate and uncontrolled, that wasn't a performance. That was the older, deeper circuit firing, the one that can't be faked on command. A group can tell the difference between a laugh that means forgiveness and one that's just for show. And so could Kale. This is the part most channels covering ancient humans skip entirely, because it sounds too soft next to spear tips and cave paintings. But it might be the single most important survival tool your ancestors ever developed, and it left almost no physical trace. Here's why the mimicry itself mattered so much, beyond just the sound of it. In 2022, a researcher at Oxford named Robin Dunbar published work on exactly this mechanism. His argument: primates bond through physical grooming, picking through each other's fur, which releases endorphins that build trust and calm. It works. But it only works one-on-one, and it takes time. As human groups grew past the size that grooming could realistically cover, something had to take its place. Laughter did. Dunbar calls it vocal grooming. A whole group can laugh together, at the same moment, and get the same endorphin hit that used to require touching each other one at a time. It's grooming, scaled up, for groups too large to touch everyone individually. Which means the moment Kale's group laughed at that snapped branch, they weren't just easing tension. They were bonding as an entire unit, all 6 of them, in seconds, using a shortcut that used to take an hour of one-on-one contact. And just when you think that's the whole story, it gets one layer stranger. Laughing at someone's mistake instead of punishing, it only works as a survival strategy if the group can genuinely tell the difference between who's forgiven and who isn't, which is exactly what that involuntary, unfakeable circuit was built to signal. We're getting to the actual answer now, and it's not what most people assume the first joke was. Everything so far, the tickling research, the snapped branch, the 2 different circuits in your skull, the endorphins, points to one answer. Here it is. The first joke wasn't a piece of language. It was a physical performance of forgiveness. Someone reenacting your failure back at you, exaggerated, safe, shared, so the whole group could release the tension of almost starving without anyone getting hurt or cast out over it. That's it. No wordplay. No setup and punchline. Just one body copying another body's mistake, turned into something the group could laugh at together instead of punish alone. Here's proof this idea holds up outside one guess about one hunting party. In 2008, a team led by Dr. Paul MacDonald at the University of Wolverhampton went looking for the oldest joke ever physically recorded in writing, anywhere on Earth. They found it on a Sumerian clay tablet dated to around 1900 BCE, nearly 4,000 years old. The joke itself is almost unbelievably ordinary. A young woman did not fart in her husband's lap. That's the whole joke. It follows a real setup and punchline structure, which means by 4,000 years ago, humans had already been telling jokes about bodies embarrassing themselves for so long that the format had fully matured into something we'd recognize today. That changes how you should think about Kale's story. If the joke structure was already mature 4,000 years ago, the actual origin, the first version of Watch Me Make Your Failure Survivable by laughing at it with you, goes back tens of thousands of years earlier, long before anyone could write it down. But here's the part that doesn't sit easily once you actually look at it. The same mechanism that saved Kale has a second setting, and it's the one nobody wants to talk about in a video about the origins of comedy. If a group can laugh with you to forgive a mistake, that same group can laugh at you to punish one instead. Same tool, opposite direction, and it can run on either of those two circuits we just talked about. Real laughter to forgive someone inside the group. Performed laughter, the voluntary kind, aimed at someone the group has already decided doesn't belong. Anthropologists studying group dynamics in small-scale societies have documented exactly this. Mockery used deliberately, socially, to decide who stays close and who gets pushed toward the edge. The branch snap could have gone the other way. If Kale had been an outsider, someone new to the group, someone lower in status, that same laugh could have turned into ridicule instead of relief. Public. Repeated. Designed to make him feel smaller every time it got brought back up around the fire, which means the first joke and the first bullying probably share the same evolutionary root. They're not opposites. They're the same tool, pointed in two different directions, depending entirely on who's allowed to be laughed with and who gets laughed at. And every playground, every office, every group chat that's ever piled onto one person's mistake for a little too long is running a version of the exact same 80,000-year-old software, just with better lighting. That's the part that connects directly to something you've done, or had done to you more recently than you'd probably like to admit. Remember how this video started. Someone embarrassing themselves in front of you, and the laugh that comes out before you've consciously decided anything. Now you know exactly what that is. It's not rudeness, and it's usually not cruelty either. It's an 80,000-year-old bonding response, wired in before language existed, still firing every time your brain registers a mistake that's safe enough to laugh about. That nervous laugh you let out when you trip in public, even when you're completely alone and there's nobody around to bond with, same circuit. Misfiring, with no audience to release it toward. Your body still runs the old program, even when the reason for it, the group, the danger, 6 hungry hunters deciding your fate, isn't there anymore. It doesn't know the hunting party ended 80,000 years ago. As far as that circuit is concerned, someone might still be watching to see if you're forgiven. You're not awkward. You're not broken. You're running software built for a hunting party that hasn't existed in 80,000 years, and it still fires perfectly, every time, whether you need it or not. Kale's chipped tooth is long gone. So is the branch, the herd, the cave. What's left is the reflex. It outlived every one of your ancestors, every war, every migration, every collapse, because the groups who could laugh off a disaster outlived the ones who couldn't. You didn't invent the ability to laugh at yourself. You inherited it from someone who needed it to survive the night, and then passed it down through every generation that came after, all the way to you, sitting here, watching this. If this changed how you think about the last time you laughed at your own mistake, or someone else's, there's more of this waiting. This channel exists to find the exact, specific moments buried in prehistory that quietly built the person you are right now, the reflexes you never chose and never questioned, and hand them back to you one at a time. Every week, we go back further. Next week, the ancient survival habit hiding inside something you do every single time you walk into a room full of strangers. You'll want to see this one.